This video intro doesn't violate any copyright laws, at least I think. I think that's good enough, right?
What is up, guys? It is King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh! Back again with yet another deck profile that I am confident calling pretty good. This is my Generaider deck profile, and I'm keeping it as pure as I possibly can, just because it's the way that I prefer to play the deck. Guys, I think this is one of the best rogue contenders out there, especially considering a lot of what got released at the time of Generaider's release. A lot of those things just kind of flew under the radar, but Generaider really is pushing through, especially after the Eternity Code support. It made it a whole lot more consistent and competitive, in my opinion. Now, I did sift through a lot of different variants of this deck, and I'm just going to say right now, I don't know if the way that I play it is the best. Really, I think it comes down to preference, and I think each different variant of this deck has different advantages and disadvantages as far as matchups go. So really what it comes down to is not whether or not this build or another build is better or worse, but what your preference is, what your budget is, and so on. But either way, Generators, no matter how you choose to build them, pack a crazy punch. And I just think that they're not only really fun to play, but also a really enjoyable play style that's actually competitive, rather than just being one of those that's like, well, you know, it's really fun, but it sucks. So I don't know why I chose the voice of like Dollar General version Ray Romano to say that. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump right in. We'll start with the monsters here. So I'm going to move some of these off to the side and get them out of the way for us. And let's begin. We start with our 3 copies of Loptier, or however you pronounce that. I say Loptier. It's probably not correct. I'm from Indiana, so we say things wrong in a way that others can't, really. We're really good at making things more complicated than they need to be as far as the English language goes. So anyway, yeah, this is really good at either getting out one of your Generaider boss monsters or being an attack boost, but it happens during the main phase. So if you do this on your opponent's turn, let's say you did not need to use it on your turn going first, what's really cool about this is you can just use it to bring out an additional boss monster by tributing one of your tokens off. But also, it can be a play starter, so you contribute this, bring out your Mardell, which then searches your boss stage, and there you go, your win condition has been put into effect. So this guy, really, really good. Or girl, I actually don't know. It's very ambiguous, but either way, great card. Next, we've got the best boss monster in the deck, for sure, as far as in-archetype boss monsters go. We've got, and I guess in the TCG, it is now Har, Generaider Boss of Storms. So what's really great about this boss monster is if your opponent adds a card from the deck to their hand, except during the draw phase, you can rip one monster from their field or hand and tell them to send that to the graveyard. So that's pretty great. And then its tribute effect, this one has 2, is you can tribute 2 Generaider and or spellcaster monsters and negate the activation of any card when it is activated, and then destroy that card. So that was really weird roundabout wording, but it's an omni negate to just shorten it up a little bit. So this guy, best one for sure. Next, we've got Hela at 2 also, because I really like the fact that she allows you to recur some of your boss monsters, because you do run through them pretty quickly. This deck can OTK, like, you know, it can push for damage pretty quickly, but during those times when you're really just trying to fight for advantage, she comes in handy. So at first I think I had this at 1, but I came to my senses and realized that, you know, once we got all of our boss monsters that were actually helpful in the deck, she needed to be there to help bring those back. Next, we've got 1 Develgus. Now this one is debated, and I don't see it in any of the other builds. Here's the reason I have kept it. 1, because we're still running, I always forget the name of, World Legacy Monstrosity. So you want different types and attributes in the deck. If you only play the good ones, you end up with too many light versus dark archetypes, and that sometimes makes World Legacy Monstrosity a brick. So at bare minimum, you need this for a target, unfortunately. But at its other point, you know, I don't know why I worded it that way either, but its other benefit of having it in this deck is sometimes you're going to see a Generaider monster that you'd prefer not be in your hand with no way to remove it or get it to the graveyard or anything else. And also, I do apologize if you hear some noise. My dogs wait until I press record to start making as much noise as they can, whether that's chewing on a bone or a toy or whatever. So I apologize if you hear that in the background. But yeah, this allows you to tribute one of your tokens to bring that Generaider monster out of your hand. And then it's just another big body on board. So I think it is beneficial. Some people will disagree with this choice, and that's fine. Put something else in there that you choose. Next, we've got one Needhog, Generaider Boss of Ice. This one is great because it's just a summon negate. It's essentially a Solemn as a monster, but it only negates an inherent special summon, I believe. Yes, it is an inherent special summon. Next, we've got Utgarda, I think is how you say that. And this one was previously the best before we got Har, but in my opinion, just one is fine. You're not going to be using its effect as often as you think, so bring it out when you need to. The other one is much better, so that's the one that you're mostly going to go for. But still, really nice to be able to tribute two monsters and then banish a card of your opponent's. But it is targeting, it's a high cost, so it's not something that I found that I use a whole lot now that I have access to other things. Better interruption that way. Next, we've got one Mardell. At first, we had two, but now that we've got our little play starter guy here, we don't necessarily need to run this at that number anymore. You can just run one because you have many pathways to get to it, including Lone Fire Blossom still. So yeah, this one doesn't really need to be at any higher of a number. It's great because it gets you to your boss stage, but you've got so many pathways there now that, yeah, this is great at one. Next, we've got Frody. I had talked about possibly cutting it, but due to the type and attribute dilemma that we're in with wanting to use Monstrosity, I thought, okay, I'll keep it in at one, and we'll leave it at that because its effect is okay, but your opponent kind of can potentially plus off of its effect anyway, and you will be losing card advantage if you're not careful. So this one you just need to use with caution or just use it as fodder for your Exceeds plays. Next, we've got Nightmare Incarnation Idli. I've seen a lot of people cut this card for another, I think it's a fairy type monster that's out now. I think it might have come out in Eternity Code. I still prefer Idli for the protection effect and the fact that you can bring it out pretty easily if your opponent link summons. So yeah, I think that this is a really, really good card. Now I know that there need to be multiple link monsters out and so on. So that's probably unlikely, but this still can be easily brought out with Monstrosity, and then it protects your monsters from the destruction effect. So yeah, Idli, really, really good card. Very underrated in my opinion. But, I'm not in charge of you. Do what you want. If you prefer the new support from Eternity Code instead of this card, completely understandable. Next, this is a tech that I really like, is two of these guys. True King I can never say this right. Agnimazud, the Vanisher. So your play starter here is a fire monster. These two are fire monsters. Then you have Lone Fire Blossom and Ash also as fire monsters. So you're not going to get to go first every time. So it increases the likelihood that you'll get to use his effect to get a free special summon and a banish of one of your opponent's resources. And at worst, it's just discard fodder for your draw spells, and it's just also fodder for bringing out, level 9s on World Legacy Monstrosity. So I highly recommend throwing this in there, or at least something similar, or another level 9. I don't know. You want to have variety in the deck. I think people are maybe not thinking ahead and throwing in only their best favorite boss monsters and not realizing that you still need to have plays at hand because not everything always goes optimally. So yeah, that's why I like this guy. It helps ensure that I've got some sort of level 9 that's different than the other guys to bring out in order to go into Exceeds plays at its worst, and at its best, it's doing other things for me too. So next we've got Condemned Witch at 2. This is a great play starter as well. It searches for your Forbidden Chalices, which we do run. It makes that card searchable. And you can also tribute this card to get to this guy. So that's really dope, honestly. It makes you have essentially math is hard. You essentially have, after you have these two guys here as well, which I'll just show you, Lone Fire Blossom at 2. You essentially have 2, 4, 5, 6 copies of Mardell able to be brought out using Condemned Witch. Now, I think the only downside with Condemned Witch is you do have to wait to do that effect and all of those things on your opponent's turn, using the Condemned Witch effect to tribute to bring out Loptier. But you can still just do those shenanigans then and roll that way. It might delay you a little bit, but it's certainly better than not getting to it at all. So you can still get your Har out eventually by, bringing out your boss stage and all that. So it'll just be, again, slightly delayed, but again, this is better than nothing, and it makes it way more consistent than it was before. Next, we've got 2 Lone Fire Blossom. Basically, they're kind of for the same purpose, but this is another copy of Loptier, essentially, because, you're just cutting the middleman out of getting to Mardell, which then thus gets you your boss stage, and then your win condition is set in motion. So yeah, sorry, I forgot what I was going to say there for a second. Next, for our last two Ash, I didn't feel that it was necessary to have 3 just because you have so much going on in the deck that, I don't know, 2 felt right because I don't really like top decking Ash in this deck. I'd rather get other resources at hand. So that's my 2 cents. Feel free to disagree and throw in whatever you want. And you might even change these to Imperm. I have Imperm, but I like having Ash in this deck just specifically for synchro plays as well as being able to use the True King. So yeah, guys, those are the monsters. Now, before we keep going, I will address that you see a black and white Ash Blossom here. So I use proxies, but only of cards that I already own. This is for people that aren't used to me, by the way. I know a lot of you have heard this before on my channel, but again, for those that are new, I don't proxy cards that I don't already own. I only proxy cards that I do own, and only that many copies, and just put them in decks. That way I don't have to switch cards around all the time for profiles and for dueling with my friends, which I know we haven't done in a little while, but yeah, that's why you see these like this. I would never ask you to invest in a card that I haven't already invested in myself. I think that would be kind of silly. So yeah, just know that I do own real Ash Blossoms. They're just not in this specific deck. It means they're in another deck. But yeah, let's continue on. Let's move into the spells. Of course, we have 3 of our win condition, Generator, Boss Stage, as well as Terraforming. So that makes 4 copies of our win condition ready for action. This gets you out your generators from deck and then creates your tokens, which is awesome. Next, we've got 2 Dark World Dealings, because chances are you're going to see your boss stage on your own turn. What this does is, yes, allows you to draw a card and discard a card, but it also allows you to get out a generator monster on your turn instead of having to wait, so you've got additional plays. Some people disagree with this play, and I understand it, but I personally like this better than the card that's coming up next, Kujikiri Curse. So this one is good sometimes, but a lot of people are running this at 3, which I think is bonkers. I think going more than 1 is crazy, and my point on that is you don't want to see your generator monsters in your hand. You really don't. Now, if you do, there's not much you can do about it. There are ways around it, but that's not ideal. Your ideal plan is not to discard your generator monsters or to have them in your hand at all. So why are people playing a card that maximizes on that? Do you get what I'm saying? So this is here for when it does happen. You can plus off of it and maybe reset and get plays going. But I certainly wouldn't put this in here as if that's what I want to do. It's not a Blue Eyes deck with trade in. It's really hard to maximize off of sending your generator monsters to the grave. Because if you don't get Hela, then you're kind of just going to leave it there. So in my opinion, I think this is better because you can discard the cards you don't need rather than discarding a card that you might need in order to draw 2 potentially dead cards. Anyway, you never know, right? So it's just, what if you draw into 2 more level 9 monsters? So, right, I mean, that's a bad point to make because I guess that could happen with this too. But I guess with this is banking on the fact that what you didn't want to happen has happened. and then you're getting rid of a card that you would need. So yeah, I don't know. That's why I'm keeping it at 1. If you disagree and think this is a great card, by all means do that. I don't think it's the best plan. And that's why I have it at 1 for just those times when, okay, it happened, we have it, here we go. But next we'll go into Generaider Boss Quest. This is pretty good, and actually better than this for when you see a Generaider monster in hand, because instead of sending it to grave, you can recycle it back into the deck and add either a boss stage or the trap or whatever to your hand. So it's super awesome. I have it at 2 though, because we don't run enough Generaider spells and traps to have this at 3. Chances are you would run out of targets and you don't want to be top decking this. So 2 is just the right amount. For those times when that happens, you can hand reset a little bit. Next, we've got 3 World Legacy Monstrosity to either summon from deck or get out a Generaider monster from hand. Probably, set it as a trap and do it during my opponent's turn. That way I can maximize on using it if I can't use its other effect to bring out 2 level 9s and thus making our calamities or whatever we want to go into. So great card for the deck. Highly recommend it. 3. Next, we've got 3 Forbidden Chalice. It's a free monster negate. Yeah, they gain 400 attack, but who cares? Honestly, you're negating their effects, and chances are you're going to use this on a combo piece, not on one of your opponent's major beaters anyway. And what's dope about this is it is searchable by the Condemned Witch, so you technically have 5 copies of Forbidden Chalice, or 5 possible chances to see it, rather. So that's pretty dope. Really good card. Now, if you don't like this, you could maybe throw in 1, change the other 2 to Imperm or whatever you want to do to change it up a little bit if you just kind of want to search it whenever you see Condemned Witch. But I like being able to see it a little more often because I think it's a good card. Next, we've got 2 Generaider Boss Fight and 3. They were all mixed up, so in my head I counted 2, but there were 3 there. I promise I know my deck. But anyway, there are 3 Generaider Boss Fight, and that's exactly right. It would be silly to only have 2 of this, because this is what allows you to continue to keep that win condition on the board. And this right here, in my opinion, is one of the reasons that this deck in particular can thrive, even though it's one of those you need the field spell to win kind of decks, because a lot of decks like that have failed in the past, those that rely on their field spell. But they did us right and gave us a card that not only can activate it from the deck, but from the graveyard. So you have so many chances to recur your field spell, which is what a lot of field spell decks need, but do not have. So this right here is what allows the deck to continue to keep up and play and win in that resource game. Next, we've got 1 Generaider Boss Room. It's very searchable, and so when you need it, you can get to it. And this allows you to block your opponent from responding to one of your Generaider effects, and it's any Generaider effect, which is awesome. So if they respond to your boss stage, your field spell, you can block that and change it to both players draw a card, and thus plus off of it and just keep going that way. So yeah, I think I messed up what I was saying right there, but hopefully that made sense. You're going to plus off of them trying to stop you with this card is what I'm getting at, and you can continue to use it. It's once per turn. It's continuous, so it sticks there as something that unless they remove it, you get to keep using. So that's really dope. Next, let's roll into our extra deck. We've got 2 of this guy, and as I said in the last profile, he's okay. Like, it's not bad. You can use him for the hand rip effect if you're really into that, but I just have him in there because of the theme, and honestly, there's room in the extra deck. The extra deck is not exactly what you're relying on as your win condition, so there's lots of wiggle room. You don't go into most of these things. I just kind of threw them in here because I had space. So yeah, you can really do whatever you want with the extra deck, minus a couple things that I'll mention that you should probably definitely have, and that's like 5 different cards. So the rest, there's a lot of room. Next, we've got 1 9 Lives Cat. I would highly recommend at least 1 of these because it's another way that you can recur not only one of your Generaider monsters, but you can also just pick a card in your opponent's graveyard and bring it back if you would so deem that necessary. So very, very good card. Very underrated. I can't believe that this was a common because it's very good in this deck. Then we've got Infinitrek Earth Slicer. So this is a great card for just pushing for game. So when you think you've got it in the bag, maybe a simplified game state, definitely start going into this guy because he's going to push you further. Next, we've got True King of All Calamities. This is when when you open Insane, and you just want to lock the game down as quickly as possible, such as Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Make this guy for sure. I think most people know that by now with this deck. Level 9s always mean this guy is coming. Next, we've got, honestly, just some random link choices. The next two are really the only cards that I really recommend. The others are very flexible. This one is World Gears of Theological Demiurgy, and I have no idea if I botched that. If I did, I'm sorry. You can make this really easy because it requires 3 level 5 or higher monsters. And what it does is, excuse me, this link summon card is unaffected by other monsters' effects. So that's already great, and it's a 3,500 attack beat stick. And then during your main phase, if you control this card that was link summoned using 3 monsters that had 3 different types and attributes on the field, you can destroy all other cards on the field. This is also a really good reason to pack in different kinds of Generator boss monsters, even though they may not be, the most flashy and the most interrupty, because, you could still go into this late game, because this deck can operate as a control deck as well. So it's very versatile, and this comes in handy during those grind games. So that's why you want to have as much, or I guess as many, rather, resources as possible. Very good card. And then what it does later is if your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck, except during the damage step, you can special summon 1 World Legacy monster from your deck. Some people have been throwing the level 9 World Legacy guy in here or whatever, but I personally haven't felt the need to throw it in. The reason that I drew attention to that effect in any way was because that guy is level 9. So if you're interested in that, you can. In my opinion, it's not necessary, but that's why I drew attention to it. It's there if you're into that. Next, we've got Geomathmech Final Sigma. So you have level 9s, and you also have Ash Blossom. There are going to be those times when you have the Ash but didn't need to use the Ash. So why not normal summon it and synchro into a 3,000 attack unaffected by everything boy. Yeah, it's super easy to do. Why wouldn't you? It's so generic. So I really love that tech. It throws people off their guard when they think they've gotten me to a place where I'm not going to be able to come back. I bring this guy out and they're like, crap. So it's 1-me duels. That's why I still keep it in the deck. It's not something that you'll do every duel, but it definitely is great for those weird moments when you're stuck with an Ash and you don't have any other moves. You can come back this way and take the game. So the next couple things are just things to think about, and you could really throw in whatever you want to, and it be effective. So I threw in Underclock. So if I need to push for a little more damage or something, Barricade Borg if I need to recycle my field spell further, Nightmare Phoenix just because it's good generic, back row removal, Decode Talker because I could easily make it, and when tokens generate, that's free tributable negation stuff with him. Probably won't make it often, but it's there. Again, I just threw some of these in. And then finally, the Borreload brothers are here as well for those moments when it would be necessary. But again, tougher to make these in this deck, but you have so much room to put things that it doesn't really matter. Now, I would go into this side deck, and I have one, but guys, it just varies so much that I'm not going to waste your time with that. My thing on the side deck is just be ready to side for either floodgates and blowout cards, or just cards that are going to help you with your weakest matchups. And finally, that'll help you go second because it'll be likely that your opponent forces you to go second. So that's something to think about. But yeah, guys, that's the deck. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and see ya.